Alice and Jack met at a nightclub. Alice went there with friends to celebrate her 18th birthday. It was her first outing into the night social life, so to speak. Before that, her parents did not allow her to visit such places, so it was a whole event for her. It was at the club that she met Jack, who was 10 years older than her. He was already an accomplished guy. He had a great job as a history teacher at the university. In addition, he was also engaged in tutoring. He had no complaints from his students, so he earned very well. Jack immediately liked a young girl who was very beautiful. He came to the club for his friend's birthday. Since he was driving, he did not drink alcohol, but he watched others with interest. He invited Alice to a slow dance, then another, and another. And at the end of the evening, the girl fell in love with her older admirer. She gave him her phone number and then waited patiently for his call for several days. They started dating, and 2 months later, Jack proposed to her. Alice's parents were against such a quick wedding. They hoped that she would graduate from university, but Alice stood her ground. They gave their blessing, taking into account that the girl promised not to drop out of school. Alice was happy. After the wedding, she moved in with her husband, who had a wonderful apartment in the downtown area of the city. She did not drop out of university and kept her promise because she graduated. She and her husband had a great relationship. Alice was just a young girl when she married him, and with him she blossomed and matured. 5 years passed, and Alice began to notice that sometimes her husband began to behave strangely. Sometimes he would come home a little tired and thoughtful, and sometimes, especially when he was late, he was in a great mood. He joked, hugged his wife, told her about his love for her. Sometimes he did not come home empty-handed. He would bring her a bouquet of flowers, then some kind of surprise, like buying a cake. His cheerful mood pleased Alice at first, but then she began to suspect something. "Well, I don't know. Let's follow him or something," said her friend Kate when Alice told her about her suspicions. "Come on, what are you saying? I don't suspect him. I'm just like that. I feel a little uneasy, Katie. I don't know why, but I'm worried. It's like something bad is waiting for me around the corner, and I won't know anything until I stumble upon it," Alice said thoughtfully. Kate took her by the hand and looked straight into her eyes. Said, "Alice, you know that you have very good intuition." "That's what scares me," Alice replied. Kate squeezed her hand. "Then do your best to find out the truth, no matter how bitter or sweet it is. You don't have to sit flat on your butt, honey, and then you'll regret that you missed your happiness. Better act," and Alice decided to act. With the help of her devoted friend Katie, she found a private detective who was ready to follow her husband. For a tidy sum, a man watched Jack for 2 weeks, and in the next meeting, he laid out the results of his observations in front of Alice. And she was shocked before the truth was revealed. Jack had a mistress, a very beautiful girl with a charming voice and a gorgeous figure. Jack saw her 3 or 4 times a week. They would go to a restaurant located in the VIP zone, and several times they came to the hotel, rented a room. They were there for several hours. The most shocking thing for Alice was that the girl was very young, just like she was when she met Jack. The mistress was only 18 years old and had just graduated from high school. Alice silently digested all the information. She was ready to cry, but right up to the moment when the detective told her, "The information, as I understand it, is very important to you, and I have done something else for which you will have to pay extra. In addition to these pictures on the street, I also took a series of pictures of a different nature. Of course, additional expenses were required here to ensure the confidentiality of access to the hotel room. You will have to reimburse me for monetary damages, but I thought it would be important for you. It seems I was not mistaken." Of course he was not mistaken. Alice was willing to pay any money for such evidence. Seeing Alice's enthusiasm, the detective asked for twice the amount he was going to announce, and Alice did not even raise an eyebrow. She didn't have that kind of money with her, but she transferred that amount. She knew that her husband would have questions about where she spent such an impressive amount, but she would come up with something. She would say that she had paid a fee for an expensive fur coat. This would convince Jack. As soon as the money was transferred to the detective, he handed her a hefty envelope and a flash drive with a satisfied face. All of the information, both photos and videos, is on a flash drive. But for convenience, I also printed everything in paper form. I hope you were satisfied with my work. If you ever need my help, then I am ready to do anything for you. You see, everything, not just a detective investigation. Hints that the detective could perform not only legitimate operations caused Alice a feeling of disgust, but she was even more disgusted by the pictures of Jack's meetings with his mistress, whose name was Emerald. Even her name was beautiful, and the photos showed the smallest details. Yes, she should have shown more gratitude to the detective. He spared no expense on the equipment. The faces were clear, and the photos were from different angles. Half of the pictures were taken near, half from far away. Alice felt sick. That bastard! He seemed such a wonderful husband, but in fact, the most ordinary womanizer. And the girl! Still milk on the lips is not dry and already tumbling with other people's husbands. That snake! Kate was indignant when a friend showed her the pictures. Alice didn't say anything. She herself was in love with Jack at the age of 18. It's no wonder that this girl also got caught in his web. She cried over these photos the whole day before. Jack asked her in the evening why her eyes were so red, and Alice simply replied that she had a headache. But now the girl had no tears. She realized that Jack had trampled on her love, and she longed for revenge, but only such revenge as to destroy Jack. She needed to come up with something that would ruin his life, and then she would leave him. Thank God she had a diploma in her hands, so she will be able to get a job and support herself. It's good that her parents forced her to study. Now, look at that. And he also does tutoring. Yes, he should be kept away from decent society, Kate persisted, swearing more and more. And then Alice had an idea. Jack is tutoring, teaches at the university, and he values his reputation very much. He is quite calm about any mistakes of other people, but he carefully monitors himself. It's strange that he walks with his mistress in front of everyone, although maybe he tells everyone that this is his niece, she thought. Alice realized that a ruined reputation would be the best punishment for her husband, and she began to implement her idea. To do this, she called a detective. If he's not just doing surveillance, then he could help her. He was just the right kind of person. Unprincipled, cunning, resourceful, and she needs him. She called him. He recognized her immediately. Or maybe he wrote down the number of a generous client. Most likely it was because when he picked up the phone, his voice was very sweet and friendly. I need your help. No, there is no need to follow anymore. No, the photos are no longer needed. I need a different kind of help. I'll tell you. And Alice told him what she needed to be done. At the end, she announced the amount she was willing to pay for this service. When she finished speaking, she heard the detective's insinuating voice. A very generous reward. For that kind of money, I'll do anything you say. I am completely at your disposal. I need something else from you. If you get me the list of his students, it will speed up my work a lot. A cold smile appeared on Alice's face. I will do it. You will receive the lists tomorrow. 3 days passed. Jack was humming a tune when he was driving to university. Today, he had another date with Emerald, and he figured out how to have fun today. He wanted to quickly share his idea with his young girlfriend. He had been anticipating the most pleasant evening. When he entered the auditorium, he was struck by the deep silence, surprised by the unusual behavior of the students. He began the lecture. But after 10 minutes, he realized that something unusual was happening. He began to look at the students, but most of the students were sitting with their eyes downcast. Some looked at Jack with some kind of contempt or disgust, and only a few people looked directly into his eyes. Jack got angry. What's the matter? Is there something written on my forehead, dear? I don't understand the reason for this behavior. Everyone was silent. Then Jack turned to one of the students who was staring at him intently. Andrew, What's the matter with you all today? What happened? After a few seconds, the guy looked from Jack to the blackboard behind the teacher. We're all right, Mr. Jack. Look at the board. It seemed to Jack that an eternity had passed when he finally managed to figure out who was in the photos posted on the board. When he realized that he and Emerald were in the pictures, he shuddered. How is this possible? Who did this? Why did they do it? And where did these pictures come from? He turned to the students and asked in an ominous whisper, Who did this? Admit who did it, otherwise I will not allow the whole group to take the exam. Andrew replied, Mr. Jack, honestly, it's not us. We went into the auditorium and then these pictures were already hanging. It's not us. Jack turned back to the photographs. His face was flushed with embarrassment and fear. Emerald's parents are not aware of their relationship. No one should have known about their relationship. And if Alice finds out, it's going to be a nightmare. He didn't want to lose his wife. Jack quickly went to the board and began to tear off the pictures. A minute later, the board was empty. Jack breathed a sigh of relief, but as it turned out, he was overjoyed early. Just as he wanted to address the students to ask them not to spread about this incident, the door to the auditorium opened. Professor Jack, you are being summoned to the dean's office. An hour later, Jack was on his way home. An unpleasant conversation with the dean, who received an envelope of pictures of Jack and Alina, disrupted lectures, a request to write on his own, too many events in 1 hour. Jack wanted to get home faster. He has already figured out what he will say to his wife. After all, this information could also reach her. As soon as he entered the apartment, he called Alice. Darling, are you home? What happened is terrible. I'm going to tell you this now. Imagine, I was fired. This is all Hammerson's machinations, I'm sure. He's always scheming against me, so he took these photos to defile my reputation. And then Jack saw 3 suitcases standing in the hallway. He looked at them in bewilderment and then went into the kitchen. Alice was sitting at the table drinking coffee. She was calm and did not even change her face when she saw her husband. Jack looked at his wife in confusion. And what are these suitcases, dear? Are you leaving somewhere? Alice put her cup on the table, folded her hands in front of her, and replied, Yes, I'm leaving. Far away? For how long? And why didn't I know about it? Jack continued to ask. For a long time, for a very long time. Jack turned pale. Then he asked, What happened? I understand nothing. Alice smiled, but there was no warmth in her smile. Don't you understand? Strange. I knew that the situation at the university wouldn't teach you anything, so I hedged my bets. Maybe too hard, but you deserve it, right? You are such a wonderful, loyal, loving man, and you managed to be like this not only with your wife, but also with your mistress. So, since you are so loving and generous, then let everyone who respected you know about it. Jack paled even more as he said, What did you do? Alice spoke calmly. I hired a detective. He was following you, and he took all these pictures. I did this so that the pictures turned out to be at the university and at the dean, but that's not all. All your students now have these photos, and I also sent them to your mistress's parents. And I have no doubt that they will not leave you alone. Her dad will be very angry, and I'm sure of it. I congratulate you, my husband. You're a star now. And yes, one more thing. I filed for divorce. Jack dropped to his knees in front of Alice. He was still thinking only about losing his wife. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I love you so much. This girl is to blame for everything. Alice furrowed her brows. What are you talking about? Are you out of your mind? I hate talking to you. I'm leaving. Alice got up and went out into the corridor. She dragged the suitcases into the entrance and then slammed the door with all her might. And Jack remained sitting on the floor. He was staring at one point, and his phone was not subsiding from calls and messages. The bell rang again, and Jack took out his phone and looked at the screen. Emerald was calling. He picked up the phone. Jack, my parents know all about you. This has turned into such a scandal for me. I had to admit that you are married and cannot marry me, and my father is very angry. I told him your address. I'm sorry. He's coming to you. Jack didn't say anything. He disconnected the phone and threw it against the wall with all his might. The mobile phone went silent forever, and Jack grabbed his head and ruffled his hair. He lost everything: his beloved wife, job, authority, reputation. What else was waiting for him ahead? He was afraid to imagine.